Alrighty, we're back with winners and losers of week 2. Now, I said this list should have been shorter, but with this crazy week 2, a lot of road wins happened, and there are a lot of winners and a lot of losers for week 2. I wasn't expecting this many upsets, but there were a lot of road teams went into places and won this week. So, pretty much anybody that pulled out this week with a win, you should be happy, especially playing against the Sun Belt. Yeah, it was a nutty weekend, but that's college football, and that's why we love this sport. So I'm gonna start off with winners, and then I'll get into the losers. So, winners, I put Louisville bouncing back versus UCF. Looked terrible against Syracuse, but they went on the road to a good Group of 5 team in UCF and won. No, it wasn't a pretty win, but a win's a win on the road, especially after losing your first game. I put J.J. McCarthy. He's officially, well, it's not official because we know how Harbaugh acts, but he's been named starter after blowing out Hawaii. Was like 11 of 12 and really should have been 12 of 12. One of the receivers dropped one of the balls, so J.J. McCarthy looked good, but it was Hawaii, so can't take too much from that. But J.J. McCarthy's a winner. Texas, they should honestly have beaten Alabama if Ewers doesn't go down, and if the refs were on their side, they probably win that game by a touchdown. Um, but once again, Bama gets saved. App State beating Texas A&M. Shout out to App State. Now, Texas A&M was probably overrated, but App State's usually a good Group of 5 team. Now, they haven't really beaten anybody since 2007 Michigan, but they broke that trend, went into A&M, and beat a very talented A&M team. Marshall upsetting Notre Dame at Notre Dame. That's a big one. Kind of showing that Notre Dame's not as good as everyone thinks, and that should scare Ohio State fans at the same time. But this is for Marshall, so Marshall going to Notre Dame is a big win for that program. Good Group of 5 team, but a road win at Notre Dame is even bigger for that program. So good job to Marshall. BYU over Baylor. It's a tough place for Baylor to go in and win. BYU, one of my more highly. I'm more high on BYU in the Group of 5 this year, if you want to consider them Group of 5. But it was a crazy overtime win, a bunch of missed field goals, great college game at night to watch. I think the game got over at like 1 in the morning. But overtime win versus Baylor, good for BYU. USC's offense, they look unstoppable, and they look like they're the real deal. And if they can continue to play like this, they'll probably run to the Pac-12. Now, they'll probably slip up somewhere, but that's near here or there for now. USC's offense won week 2. Oklahoma State, this wasn't a big winner, but they took care of business against a bad Arizona State team, which the defense kind of sort of choked for against Central Michigan. Jesus, and they took care of business and won by a couple touchdowns against Arizona State. Kentucky goes to Florida, beats Florida. It's a big win for Kentucky, and the SEC East looks like it's going to be a very interesting race, especially for second place. Arkansas, 44-30 versus South Carolina. It's a good win. I really don't know how to explain this game because I didn't really watch it, but I just kind of looked over the stats and stuff. So it didn't look like anything crazy, but it kind of seemed more of a back-and-forth game until the end, and it looks like Arkansas just kind of pulled away. So Arkansas 44-30 over South Carolina. Tennessee going to Pitt and getting an overtime win. Now, Keaton Slovis did get knocked out, but with Tennessee's program, that should be a win, especially on the road against a good Pitt defense. So Tennessee, overtime win. Washington State going to Wisconsin and winning. That's a big win for Washington State, especially because they looked pathetic against Idaho the first week. So they were pretty much able to beat Wisconsin at its own game, which is defense. And, yeah, just basically went on the road and won. Washington State. Sam Hartman, 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. After everything that's been going on with him, he came out there. Yes, it was Vandy, but to go on the road in the rain and throw for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns, it's impressive. Sam Hartman is the real deal. Texas Tech, big win over Houston. Good program win. Texas Tech, not really that good. Houston's supposed to be one of the better Group of 5 teams. Yes, it was at home, but and Houston was ranked. So anytime you can win a game like that, especially in overtime, it's a good win for you. Duke goes to Northwestern and basically was blowing them out the whole game. Northwestern started coming back, but that's just what they do. But Duke held on, went on the road, and beat a very I wouldn't say very, but Northwestern's not very good. So I would say a decent Northwestern team. Um, Kansas State blows out Missouri 40-12. I was expecting that game to be a lot closer, but they took care of business. Missouri, way more talented, and Deuce Vaughn looks like the real deal. Air Force, they're the best team in Colorado. Colorado should be. Colorado is a disgrace to Power 5 football, and yeah, they just completely blew them out. Yes, it was raining, but they're an option team, so that may have helped them, but I mean that's just what they do every game. So Air Force looked really good. Could be in the New Year's Six bowl games at this rate. Yeah, so Air Force. Iowa State finally beats Iowa. Now, they wanted to let Iowa win this game for how many stupid things that were happening in this game, but Iowa's offense is historically bad, and Iowa State came up on top. Iowa State finally gets over the Iowa hump and wins the Cy-Hawk. It's a good job to Iowa State, Matt Campbell. Illinois, they look pretty impressive. It's either that or Virginia's just that bad, but they blew them out. They blew out Virginia 24-3. That's a good win for Illinois. Usually a game that Illinois gets blown out in. Kansas, overtime win versus West Virginia. Kansas looks way more improved. Lance Leopold is the real deal, and he's the perfect coach for that program. So good job to Kansas. 2-0, 1-0, top of the Big 12 right now. Georgia Southern. I picked this game. Georgia Southern beats Nebraska. I picked this game. They get Scott Frost fired. Now, that's a good thing because Scott Frost is a scumbag. Go back to the video. You already know. But the sad part is I can't roast Scott Frost anymore. So this is good and bad for me. But good job to Georgia Southern to going to Nebraska and beating a terrible Nebraska team. Virginia Tech, bounce back win versus Boston College. They blew out Boston College. Now, Boston College doesn't look that great. However, Virginia Tech lost to Old Dominion, so that's a good win for Virginia Tech, and they did it in a pretty good fashion. Oregon State goes on the road versus Fresno State and wins. That's a game Oregon State usually loses. Now they've beaten Boise State and Fresno State back-to-back. Oregon State looks like they could be pretty decent this year, 7, maybe 8 wins. So Oregon State. And then to end the winners list, I have Mississippi State blowing out Arizona. Now the game was pretty close, but until I want to say like early in the fourth quarter, then Mississippi State started pulling away. But that's good for Mississippi State because going on the road at night in the desert is never good for any team, especially away or out of conference. And to do that and blow them out at the end, that's a really good win for Mississippi State. So Mississippi State is my final winner of the week. Now, if I can ever turn this page over. Losers. Got a long list here. I put Hawaii on here because it's criminal and it should be illegal for how bad they are. I mean, they should not be able to afford to put a team on the field. It is horrible how bad they are. God awful. It, like I said, criminal. Hawaii, probably the worst team I've ever seen. I mean, I think some high school teams could beat them. Alabama, once again, saved by the refs. Should have been a safety at the end. They got lucky because, unfortunately, Quinn Ewers left the game. If Quinn Ewers stays in the game, Texas might win that game by 2 touchdowns. Safety should have happened. I don't know how many personal fouls you can get till you can get kicked out of the game, but there were plenty of personal fouls. Alabama's receivers aren't that good. Alabama was saved by Vegas. Let's just say that. Clemson, they don't look good to me at all. They played a bad Furman team. Yeah, I mean, the defense looked okay, but the offense, yes, they ended up scoring 34, but, I mean, it's Furman. You guys should be dropping 50, 60 points. I'm sorry. Texas A&M offense and Jimbo. Texas A&M's offense might be almost as bad as Iowa's, and Jimbo needs to stop doing this, hard scheme that he's got going because this is college and you don't have a good enough quarterback to be doing that kind of stuff. You need to simplify that offense because that team is way too talented to lose to an App State team, especially in that fashion, where App State dominated you in every phase. Every phase. Oklahoma in the first half. they were down like 3-0 the entire first half until like the last drive where they did end up taking the lead and 7-3. Now they did take care of business in the second half, but that first half should kind of scare some people. If you think that's a good win, that's sad, and Oklahoma does not look impressive right now. And now they have to go to Nebraska, who just fired Scott Frost, so there is a high of a new coach, and Scott Frost is gone. Now, how much does the scheme change? I don't know. How much does the coach change? I don't know. But I would be more scared, especially if that first half happens again for Oklahoma. Notre Dame. Dear Lord, you guys. Marcus Freeman is now 0-3. I have a video over that for him replacing Scott Frost for me. Notre Dame's offense looks bad. Now your starting quarterback's gone. Now, of course, Notre Dame's going to have a great tight end. They always do. The defense still wasn't that impressive. I really can't explain how bad Notre Dame is, which is sickening because that makes Ohio State look worse. And, yeah, I mean, Notre Dame, I guess that first week against Ohio State wasn't as good of a game as we all thought. So Notre Dame sucks, and that's that. Anthony Richardson, week 1, looked really good against Utah. Week 2 looked really, really bad against Kentucky. And unfortunately, that sucks because I was kind of high on Anthony Richardson. But if you can't be consistent, that's going to hurt your team, and you end up losing to Kentucky. Miami, Florida in the first half was 10-7 against Southern Miss. Now, they somewhat took care of business in the second half, but they didn't really impress me at all either. But they're going to Texas A&M. They can reprove themselves this weekend, and Texas A&M's offense isn't that good, and this Miami defense is going to be the best they've faced all year. So I might pick Miami to win that game, but for now, Miami's first half is a loser from week 2. South Carolina, Spencer Rattler actually looked impressive stat-wise because, like I said, I didn't watch the game. But South Carolina, you're just a loser because you lost. That's a big game that would have been good for the program, but you didn't win. You lost by 2 touchdowns to a decent Arkansas team, and that's the only reason why you're on this list, really. It's because you lost. Pat Narduzzi, dear Lord. I said Narduzzi's play calling because they were on the 49 in a crucial time in the game, and he decided to punt the ball. And now I know Keaton Slovis was out at this point, but you cannot be punting the ball in a crucial spot. I think it was like 4th and 2 on the 49-yard line. You just got to go for that. I'm sorry. It's a big game. You got to take some risks if you want to win these big games. And Pat Narduzzi's play calling is brutal. It's completely different than what Mark Whipple was running. And for what he said at the ACC Media Day, he should be ashamed. I really liked Pat Narduzzi, but the more and more I'm seeing that he's kind of an asshole, I'm kind of starting to dislike him again. So Pat Narduzzi's play calling is a loser this week. Wisconsin looks god-awful. You're a loser this week. I just put Vandy on here because it was disappointing, but there was a big downpour, and Sam Hartman came back, so that kind of screwed over everything with Vandy this week. But after that pick 6 at the beginning, it was kind of just over from there, and unfortunately Vandy looked like Vandy again. Northwestern, I just said they look bad. Northwestern's not supposed to be some great team, but Duke's not supposed to be some great team either, and Duke looked like they were going to drop 60 points on you. Now, you did recover in the second half, but Northwestern, loser, you lost. North Carolina's defense still looks terrible, probably the worst in Power 5. Missouri goes to Kansas State. You're more talented than Kansas State. You should not be getting blown out by Kansas State. You should have a close game against Kansas State. Now, Kansas State deserves that win because that's a game that Kansas State usually wins because they're very good at home. But to get blown out by them is a disgrace, and Missouri is probably going to be terrible now. Colorado, I've already said my words on them. To get blown out by Air Force, to be the worst team in Colorado it's just disappointing, I guess. Sorry, Colorado fans. Iowa's offense, the worst historical offense, especially after 2 weeks. Only 150 yards of offense against your rival. Spencer Petras is terrible. Brian Ferentz, everybody knows this story. It's going around all of college football. Iowa's offense is atrocious, and they'll be lucky to win a game after that. Um, Virginia, I mean, I wasn't expecting them to be terrible, but I was expecting them to be bad, but I wasn't expecting them to be this bad. To have a quarterback like that and only score 3 points against Illinois, now it could be Tony Elliott coaching. I don't know, but they looked terrible. They get blown out by Illinois, 24-3. Neil Brown, probably next in line for me if Marcus Freeman doesn't pan out for coaches to troll or whatever, because Neil Brown loses to Kansas now. I actually picked Kansas to win this game in the offseason. However, I wasn't expecting it to be a shootout with Kansas. I was expecting, like a 17-14 where Kansas defense kind of shows up. But Kansas looks like they're going to be pretty good. They might actually make a bowl game now. And I wouldn't be shocked if they won 2 or 3 more conference games. West Virginia, fortunately, JT Daniels chose the wrong spot because JT Daniels looked really good. However, his defense does not help him out at all. And West Virginia may not win a game this year. So Neil Brown, I put him as a hot seat contender, and that's why he's a loser. I just put Auburn on here because they look bad, but I just think they're overlooking for Penn State. So there's nothing like too big there. They still won, but it was only by a touchdown against San Jose State. So, and with all the off-field issues, I kind of give Brian Harsin some leeway there. So if he can beat Penn State next week, there's no reason to have him on this list, but for now, Auburn is on the losers list just because it was only a touchdown score against San Jose State. Nebraska, Scott Frost is gone. We all know. I've said it a million times. Nebraska is terrible, losing to Georgia Southern at home. Scoring 35-plus points. Nebraska was like 231-0 or something weird, and they lost. So that just shows how bad Scott Frost was. So Nebraska's a loser. Boston College, terrible. Lost to Rutgers and now gets pretty much blown out by Virginia Tech, who lost to Old Dominion. Boston College may not make a bowl game now, which is unfortunate because they had a lot coming back, and I was high on Phil Dracovic and Jeff Hafley. Nothing's clicking for them right now. Now they may bounce back, but for now, Boston College is a loser. Indiana, they were down 10-0 to Idaho at halftime. Now they came back and looked better in the second half, but Idaho is not a good team. But they have competed with Washington State and now Indiana, so maybe I'm completely downplaying Idaho, but it's Idaho, and your Big Ten program. To be down 10-0 at halftime, it's a disgrace to the Big Ten. So Indiana, you're a loser this week. And then I just put Arizona on here. Yes, they ended up getting blown out, but for the most part, that was a close game. But they just lost, so I had to put them on the list. So yeah, that's my winners and losers from week 2. Way longer than what I wanted it to be, but a lot of stuff happened this week. So without further ado, week 2 is over. On to week 3. College football, best sport in the world. Like, share, and subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next one. See you.